Good afternoon, students. Is the voice audible to you?
Yes, ma'am.
Good afternoon, ma'am.
Good afternoon. So, in morning's lecture, we have seen the PP cycle and CN cycle, and we have started the discussion on the cyclotron. Okay. So, before going towards cyclotron, in morning's lecture, I have missed one thing that I would like to show to you at first. That is not any that thing is not having any scientific correlation. Just for your information and motivation, I thought I should mention that thing. Okay. So quickly I'll share the screen. Just a second. Okay, so in morning's lecture I have mentioned that we have discussed about the PP cycle and CN cycle. Both reactions are related to the nuclear fusion process, and as I have mentioned, the study related to that PP cycle and CN cycle was done by Hans Bethe. And for this particular study related to this nuclear interactions, which occurs in case of various stars, Hans Bethe has got the Nobel Prize. So the photograph that you can see on the screen is the photograph of Hans Bethe along with some author. So in that you can see the person who is sitting at this front side is nothing but the Hans Bethe. And after getting the Nobel Prize, he has visited the Aurangabad, the city where you people are having your institution. Okay, so after getting Nobel Prize, he has visited the Aurangabad and he wanted to have the collaboration with one of the physics teacher, who is nothing but the Professor Idgi. So he is the Professor Idgi, who was the former head of the department in Marathwada University, who is a teacher of my teacher. Okay, so this information I'm giving as it is having some correlation with me, because I am the person who has completed the PG and PhD from the Marathwada University, as I said, from the same department where once Hans Bethe has visited. So I have delivered so many lectures, and I have defended my PhD Viva examination from the same place. So it is having some correlation with me. So I thought I should share that thing with you. And another factor that I would like to mention to you is that most of the time student may feel that at the time of 11th and 12th, everybody wants to go to the IITs or NITs for their engineering courses, but due to some problem they not go to that particular place, and you have to satisfy with another colleges. Okay, so that may be a case with several students right now. So it is not the place where you study in actual, but it is totally dependent upon your knowledge, your performance. So if you can do the better performance even at this place, you can achieve something like Professor Idgi has achieved. So he is having direct correlation with Nobel laureate, and he is not the professor from IIT or NIT. He is just a physics teacher in Marathwada University. But due to his knowledge, I would like to mention one thing, that Idgi is the professor who has developed carbon dioxide laser very first in the India. So due to his that investigation and discovery, most of the researchers across the world has shown the interest to work with him, and like this he has captured the attention of all over the world. So it is dependent upon you how you perform in your field, and then of course success will be yours. So that is one motivation line that I thought I should share with you, and that's why I have included this picture in my presentation just to show you. Okay, So this is a picture from my department, physics department, in Marathwada University. Okay, so in morning's lecture we have discussed all that things, and again we were at the accelerators. Again, I would like to mention you one thing, that I feel always fortunate that whatever center I have shown in the morning, Inter-University Accelerator Center, so I got opportunity to have some to attend some lectures over there. I have visited this particular institute in the year of 2015, and some part of my research I have done at this particular center. So in that sense also I feel very fortunate. So you people are also having the opportunity to visit such kind of institutions, or to have some collaboration with national laboratories. Okay, so it is not like that you are not at the IITs means you have missed something. Even from this place also you can do anything that you want. Okay, so that are the things that I thought I should mention with you. Okay, so in morning's lecture we have talked about the cyclotron accelerator, which give the acceleration to the charged particles, for example proton, and while giving the acceleration to the proton, it follows one particular procedure. So in that procedure already we people have seen the video. So in that video it is clearly mentioned how is the movement of the proton. Basically a magnetic field is created into the particular area. Whatever are the cyclotrons, they are placed in an evacuated chamber. Vacuum is created where there will be actual movement of the proton, because if air molecules are there, then there are chances that whatever protons are there, they will get interacted with the air molecules, and they will lose their energy. So in order to protect the energy which is there for the proton, and of course we want that high amount of energy in order to have the interaction with various kinds of samples. So for that purpose, basically the evacuated chamber is used for such kind of studies. Okay, so as you people have seen, the proton source is kept in between these two Ds. Then these two Ds are connected to the electric field, AC electric field, and above and below to the these Ds there will be electromagnets, which will give you the magnetic field from the downward side to the upward side. Okay, so due to the alternating current which is flowing from these two Ds, there will be alternate positive and negative charges over these two Ds, and wherever are the negative charges, the movement of protons will be in that direction. So if say this portion is at the negative charge at first, then proton will go towards this side. Then when it will have the movement, circular movement, and it will come into the gap, then at that moment of course this D will get a negative charge, so that proton particle will move towards the another D. Okay, because proton is having the positive charge, and these are having the negative charge. So in between the opposite charges there will be a attraction. So like this. So whenever that proton will cover a particular distance in the particular D, of course at every time there will be increase in its radius. So you can see that picture. Okay, so here you can see the circular pattern is provided. At first this movement, then radius is increased in this D. When it goes towards another D, again you can see the increase in radius is there. So that is due to the combination effect of electric field and magnetic field. Okay, so like this, whenever this proton will move into this circle, it will gain high amount of energy, and at a particular moment the energy will be that much high that particle will escape from the D's that are present in that particular apparatus. Okay, so the high speed protons, the protons which has got high amount of speed, high amount of acceleration while having movement through this particular D, they are moved towards the sample material with which the interaction is expected. Okay, so basically such kind of particles are accelerated to have the interaction with the samples. So sample may be anything, like you people have seen about the superconductivity in the Friday's lecture. So that interaction will be with various kinds of superconductors in order to have the room temperature superconductivity, or there are chances that such kind of interactions are possible with various kinds of various kinds of nanomaterials in order to have various applications. So applications are having the wide range. So according to your application, you can have the interaction. Now the speed of the particles and the selection of the particles and this, what is the sample which is used in this particular study, that is totally dependent upon the researcher who wanted to perform such kind of experiments. Okay, so that is the main line to have the understanding of cyclotron. Okay, so construction you people have seen, as it is developed by the scientist Lawrence, so it is generally called as the Lawrence cyclotron. So Lawrence cyclotron consists of two flat semicircular metal boxes, D1 and D2, which are generally called as Ds, that you people have seen. These two Ds are separated by a narrow parallel gap. Little bit gap is there, that also you people have seen already. Then alternating source of electric field is connected in between these two Ds in order to have the required polarity in to the Ds, that also we people have seen. Okay, so the electric field is directed towards D1 at first, then D2, then again D1 and D2. So that cycle will be there in a continuation. Okay, so D1 and D2 becomes alternatively positive and negative charges, will have the that kind of charges, and that will be at a particular amount of frequency. Okay, then of course source is placed in between the two Ds. Basically in the cyclotron, the source with positive charge is selected for the acceleration. Okay, as I mentioned, the entire thing is mounted in the vacuum chamber in order to have any disturbance from the air molecules should be avoided, and in that manner vacuum chamber is selected over here. Can anybody tell me how to create the vacuum? Do you have any idea about that? Yes, Abhishek has mentioned he is having confusion that if a gap is there in between two Ds, there will be some leakage of current. We are not interested in the conduction at this particular place. So if a leakage of current is there, if leakage of current is not there, we are not having any concern to that. Just we want to have the attraction from the metal boxes, so that the particle will get the high amount of energy. Okay, so that concern is not over here. Again, if some kinds of losses are there, as I have already mentioned, whenever such kind of studies are planned, so basically the researchers or scientists, they go for the simulation and they try to evaluate each and everything, that if I use the proton particle, then what amount of size of that D's is required, which particular, see, even which metal you are using, that is also having some correlation. If you are using the metal boxes of say aluminium, it will have a different impact. If you are using the D's with say gold, it may have a different impact. So at the start only you need to evaluate each and every bit of the experiment, which particle you want to accelerate, at what energy it should have interaction with the sample, how is your sample, after interaction what results are expected, then how are the metal Ds, which kind of electromagnets are required for that study. So each and every bit of the experiment you have to evaluate at first, and for that your theoretical knowledge plays an important role. Okay, so high amount of theory knowledge if you are having, then with the help of simulators you can design your experiment, and of course after that you have to perform that experiment in a real manner. Even though you have studied all that things and you have performed the simulation, there are chances that you will get some different kinds of results. So that scientist or that researcher should have the ability to explain the results that they have got, and that's why such kind of studies they require high amount of knowledge by the person who is interested to perform such kind of work. Okay, as I have asked for the question related to the vacuum, Akib has mentioned just we need to remove the air and we can get the vacuum over there. Okay, so removal of air will create the vacuum. In order to create a vacuum, high amount of or the pumps which are having the high energy to remove the air can be used. So that is a different kind of study, vacuum technology, that is also having the high impact on this particular experiment. So how you create a vacuum, with what kind of pump you are creating a vacuum, that is also an important thing. Okay, and as I have mentioned, at the time of applying electric field you have to have the control over the magnetic field which is there on the both the Ds. Okay, so the chamber is mounted horizontally in between the pole pieces of huge electromagnet which are capable to produce a particular amount of magnetic field. Okay, so working, we have seen the charged particle will get attracted towards the first D at first, then second D, then while having that movement, circular movement is there, which will be due to the combination of electric field and magnetic field which is applied over there, and according to that the movement will be possible over there. So theoretical part I'll skip it very quickly. So ultimately, as you people have seen, like that GoFun, you need to rotate the particle for a longer time, so that after its rotation it will gain high amount of energy, and that high amount of energy is expected to impart to the sample which is used in the study. Now how much amount of energy that particle will gain, for that you need to see this particular relation. Okay, so energy which is there in this particular case will be r square q square b square divided by 2m. Basically here you can see this capital R is nothing but the radius of that D in maximum. So what radius that D is having, the maximum radius, so energy is dependent upon that maximum radius. Then Q is the charge on that particular particle. If you are taking the proton particle, then that is also having some correlation. Then of course that energy is directly proportional to the magnetic field that is applied over there. Okay, so like this, these are the important thing. And another important thing is the mass of that particular particle. So that energy is inversely proportional to the mass of that particular particle, and by this calculation at this start you can see what amount of energy will be there after performance of this particular practical. Okay, so cyclotrons are basically the accelerators which are used to give the acceleration to the charged particles like protons, and the energy, this much amount of energy you will get after having at the end of the experiment. Okay, so this is the case related to cyclotron. If some doubts are there, we will have the discussion for 2 minutes. Yes, is there any doubt? And one important thing that I have to mention, before 2 lectures back, at the start of nuclear physics chapter, as I have mentioned, that lecture I feel very satisfied, because you people have asked so many queries, and that are related to the nuclear physics, which is completely physics oriented branch, or it is completely having inclusion of so many physics related facts. So I would like to mention one thing, that if you are having interest in such kind of topics, it is not the case like you are from the computer science background and you can't do anything in this particular field. Even the national laboratories like IUSC, as I have mentioned, or BARC, where most of the work which is done is related to the nuclear physics. So all that laboratories, they require computer science students. So if you are having much amount of interest in this particular field, of course you can go for such kind of, you can go to such an institutions where you may do the work that is facilitating you in a more manner. Okay, so that laboratories, they are having the scientist positions. So even after your graduation, you may go for the scientist D or scientist C kind of post. And of course after PG and all, there are some more demanding positions like scientist F or something, scientist G. So really, if you are having the computer science background and you are having the interest in the nuclear physics sector, then of course there are huge kinds of opportunities for you people in this particular field. It is not the case like nuclear physics or these kinds of institutes offer job opportunities only for the physicist. This is not the case. Even engineers are having more opportunities in such kind of institutions. Okay, as I mentioned, simulation is the main part which is performed in such kind of laboratories. So for that, of course, computer science students may have their role. So I thought this I should mention with you, and if you are having any doubts, you may ask at this particular time. Is there any doubt? If yes, unmute and ask. If no, put no in the chat box. Okay. So the last, second last, we can say, part of this particular chapter is the GM counter. Already you people know this particular term, GM counter. In the practical session, I have given you the task to go through the video link which is there related to the GM counter related experiment, and I think you people have done that task. So at first I would like to ask from you people that what you know related to the GM counter. Yes. What is GM counter and where it can be used? Yes.
Ma'am, it is used for detecting and measuring ionizing radiations.
Yeah, that is correct. Okay. What are the components of GM counter? Any idea? And basically in the video that link I have provided to you, how to work with GM counter is explained in that. Okay, and of course I have asked you to take the readings, and depending upon that readings you may have plot one graph. So if possible, try to mention what are the components that you have seen in that video link, how readings are there, and how was that graph, because that graph is related to the working of GM counter. So if it is possible for you to explain that things, of course I am waiting for that. Yes, anybody? Anyone may give the answer. Farhan is saying it is a Geiger-Müller counter used for detection and measurement of all types of radiation. Yeah, that is absolutely correct. What are the components of GM counter? Geiger-Müller tube is one component, of course. Okay, basically a Geiger-Müller tube is used and ionizations are counted. What kind of graph you have seen with respect to GM counter, and what are the different regions of that counter, and whatever are the regions, they are having particular terminologies, particular names are mentioned for each region. So what that names, what is the meaning of that names, and what is the significance it is having? So any idea related to that? See, I am asking this question because I have already given this assignment to you, and it is expected that you people have completed that assignment in the last week itself. Okay. So basically, whatever we have seen, even in PP cycle, CN cycle, or in the nuclear fission, as I have mentioned, that whenever this nuclear fission process takes place or nuclear fusion process takes place, there is emission of some radiations. Okay, and even in while explaining the PP cycle, you have seen certain Q1, Q2, Q3, or gamma, alpha kind of symbols. So that symbols represents that there are some radioactive emissions from that reactions. Okay, and this is one thing, that whenever you perform the nuclear fission or fusion, there will be some radioactivity at that particular instance. And another thing is that these radiations that are emitted by heavier nuclei or smaller nuclei after having the nuclear interactions, that radiations are also useful in various fields. Okay, so one field where we can find the applications of radioactive elements is the medical research field. So there are various treatments in which the radiations are imposed upon the human body, and treatments were done. Okay, so basically in that kind of treatments where the radioactivity will be there, so we want there should be a precise amount of radiations, or whatever are the radioactive emission is there, that should be of high amount. And to detect that small amount, basically we need to use certain kinds of detectors. So one of the detector is GM counter. Okay, so how that GM counter is there and how it detects the radiations, that we have to see through this particular topic. Okay, so before going towards topic, I am having one small video which I found is very interesting, so I would like to show that video to you at first.
In my last video, I presented the new Safecast Onyx Geiger counter. As a response, somebody asked how many people would actually know what a Geiger counter is. Good point. Let's get this out of the way first. You've heard of radioactivity, right? That dangerous stuff that's used in dirty bombs, causes zombie outbreaks, and giant mutated lizards. Only one of these is true, by the way. Radioactivity happens when an unstable particle falls apart and sends out smaller particles or rays. These rays or particles can cause damage when they encounter cells, causing cells to die or to mutate. Radioactivity is all around us. It's in the air, in materials in the earth, in common household articles such as cat litter. Even the sun shoots radioactive particles at us constantly, but these doses are usually too small to be dangerous. The thing is, we can't see, hear, feel, smell, or taste radioactivity. It's completely undetectable by our senses. That's what you need a Geiger counter for. A Geiger counter is a device that lets you measure the number of radioactive particles around you. In its simplest form, it just counts the number of particles or rays it encounters and displays the average count per minute. The main building part of a Geiger counter is a Geiger-Müller tube, named after two physicists from the early 20th century. It works like this. If a radioactive particle or ray enters the tube, it causes the gas inside to conduct electricity. Every time that happens, the counter gets activated. Woohoo! There are many different kinds of Geiger counters. Some good for measuring specific types of radiation, others for hotspots, others for heavy contaminated areas. The Safecast Onyx that I showed you in my last video is a handheld Geiger counter for low-level radiation, especially for alpha and beta radiation. So here we go. A Geiger counter helps you measure radioactivity by counting particles. Thanks for watching.
So as you people have seen in the video, basically to take count of the radiations generated by a particular radioactive material, Geiger-Müller counters are used. There are various kinds of Geiger-Müller counters available in the market. Of course, to have the radioactive source, you need to take the permission. If you want to use the radioactive sources, that may be for medical, that may be for research, you have to take the permission from the government, and then only you can work on such kind of devices. Very recently, in the last year or in the last lockdown, we at our institute has ordered the GM counter, and of course to take one beta source, we have taken permission from the government, and then the permission is granted to us, and we got the entire setup of GM counter, which you people have already seen. The video link that I have shared with you, in that you have seen the apparatus and all. So whenever you will visit to the college, of course you can see that particular instrument in actual, and if you want to have the working on that, that also be possible at that moment. Okay, so basically in order to detect the radiation count, Geiger-Müller counter is used basically, and it is very sensitive instrument. So a single radiation is also detected by the instrument, and that amount of precise instrument is required for such kind of study. So in 1928, Geiger and Müller, which are two different scientists, they devised this particle detector, and as it is used for counting the ionization radiation, GM counter name is given to them, and that GM counter, how it looks, that you can see here. Of course, this is the working diagram or block diagram, one can say, of the GM counter. So what it is having, as mentioned by one of the student, I think Farhan has mentioned, Quddus has mentioned that it is having the Geiger-Müller tube. So here you can see a tube is there. So glass tube or metal tube is used in such kind of study, and in between that tube there is one metal wire, okay, and in that Geiger-Müller tube basically 90% of argon and 10% of ethanol is filled with high amount of pressure. And here you can see at one side there is a mica window, and at one side there is a facility to have the insertion of the ionizing radiations. So whenever this ionizing radiations will be there in contact with this argon and ethanol, they will cause the ionization of these materials, and due to that ionization you can see there will be some amount of current in the Geiger-Müller tube. So that current is detected with the help of detector, or you people have seen that due to the generation of current there is a variation in the voltage. So variation in the current and voltage is detected with the help of Geiger-Müller counter, and depending upon that you can plot the graph of radiation counting. So how that graph looks, that we are going to see. Before that, one more video is there related to the working of Geiger-Müller counter that I would like to show to you.
Grammarly can help you write quickly and confidently, so you never have to slow down at work. Stay on top of emails, documents.
A GM counter or Geiger-Müller counter is an example of gas-based counter. It's based on the ionization property produced by a charged or uncharged energetic particle. So
I think some network problem is there, so we'll wait once it gets solved.
A GM counter or Geiger-Müller counter is an example of gas-based counter. It's based on the ionization property produced by a charged or uncharged energetic particle. So it can detect charged particles like alpha beta and uncharged radiations like X-rays, gamma rays, etc. The charged particles directly ionize the gas, and the radiations produce secondary electrons, which in turn produce ionizations. This cylindrical tube is used as cathode, and this axial rod made of tungsten is used as anode. A very high positive voltage is applied to this anode wire, and the cylindrical cathode is held at a ground potential. This tube is filled with inert gas like argon, neon, helium, etc. So when a charged particle enters the counter, it collides with the gas atoms. So it's like this is an atomic system and the electron is moving around the nucleus. Now, when the energetic particle falls on the electron, if the energy of the particle is enough, the electron will get out of the atom, and now the atom will behave as a positive ion. Since very high potential is applied to the anode, this electron will be attracted to the anode, and on its way it will collide with the other atoms and ionize them also. So it will go on. This electron will generate more electrons, and they will also ionize the other atoms. This process goes on, causing an avalanche effect. As a result, there is a lot of negatively charged electrons and positively charged ions. All the electrons are collected on the anode, and all the positive ions are collected on the cathode. All this happens in a few microseconds. As a result, there is a current flow in the circuit. And for this current flow, there will be a voltage drop on the resistance. And a pulse counter is connected with this resistance. So when there is a voltage drop, it will make a count. Thus our particle get counted. flowing through the circuit, the electron come to the cathode, recombine with the positive ions and normalize it. Now here is the problem. When the recombination occurs, the resulting gas molecules are raised to the excited states and then it emits some radiation, and this emission contains some ultraviolet content and it causes a photoelectric emission from the cathode surface, and these photoelectrons initiate a fresh avalanche process. As a result, we will get more counts which are not correct. So to get right counts, we must have to stop this photo emission. For this we use quenching. For this we fill the GM counter with 90% argon and 10% ethyl alcohol. And one interesting feature of alcohol is that its large polyatomic organic molecules favor dissociation than excitation. As a result, it doesn't go to the excited state and no UV or other radiations are emitted in this process, and hence a second avalanche can't start. So we'll get a correct count this time. So this is all about GM counter.
Okay, so whatever you people have seen, the particular combination of argon and ethanol is taken in order to have the proper count of the ionizing radiations. Whenever ionizing radiations enter into the chamber, what they will do, they will cause the ionization of the gaseous molecules present in the tube, and due to that ionization, whatever are the electrons, they will get attracted towards the cathode. This metal wire which is placed and at the middle position is acting as the cathode, and the external portion will as an anode. Sorry, the central wire will act as an anode and the rest of the portion will act as a cathode. So whatever are the negative electrons, negatively charged electrons, they will get attracted towards the anode side. Okay, and due to that, what will happen, the circuit will get completed and you will get the particular amount of voltage drop. Due to that voltage drop, of course, corresponding current we can get, and that current basically is converted into the counting signals. Okay, so for that, of course, some transducing kind of circuitry is required in the GM counter. So with the help of that, one can detect the ionization. Now, how are the ionization with respect to the applied potential? I think by having the particular readings in that practical related video, you people have got such kind of graph. So have you plotted this particular graph in the laboratory file? Have you done this particular practical? Okay, so if you have plotted this graph, can you explain how is the graph? As I mentioned, it is having certain kinds of regions. Okay, with respect to applied potential, you can see the count rates are mentioned. So whatever is the graph, depending upon that graph's nature, certain portions are made. One is proportional region, another one is plateau region, and then there is a continuous discharge region. So do you have any idea what are these regions? If you have plotted the graph, of course the answer should be yes. So what are that regions? Yes, any idea? Okay, so basically in the working of Geiger-Müller counter, at first whenever the ionization goes into the GM tube, at first there will be a very less amount of counting, or that Geiger-Müller counter will not give any response to the incoming radiations. Okay, so you will get very less amount of counting, or counting will be zero at that particular time. Then there you can see the exponential increase in the GM counter. So the region which is showing the exponential increase in the counting radiation, that region is considered as a proportional region, because with respect to voltage applied, there will be a counting, so there will be a proportional region, direct proportion will be there. So that region is considered as the proportional region. So after that, one stage will come where if you increase the potential, there will not be any change in the counting rate. Okay, so or if some changes are there in the counting signals, then they will be of very small differences. Okay, so generally a linear line can be seen at a particular region, so that region is considered as a plateau region. Okay, after plateau region, if you apply further potential, then there will be sudden increase in the counting rate. Okay, or counts of the ionizing radiations will increase in a high manner. So that particular region is considered as a continuous discharge region, or you can say there is a high saturation of the ionizing radiations in the Geiger-Müller counter. Okay, so with the help of Geiger-Müller counter, you can detect the radiations, and that radiations can be plotted in such kind of graph. And basically the plateau region is the main important region. By considering the plateau region, you can have the nature and you can study the ionizing radiations. Okay, so in order to detect the radiations, Geiger-Müller counter is used, and based upon this graph you can decide at what particular region I have to work, in what particular region I have to have my applications. Okay, so this is related to the Geiger-Müller counter. And the last portion with respect to this particular topic is the applications of nuclear physics. Of course, we have seen certain nuclear reactions, that is nuclear fission and fusion. Then we have understood the nuclear reactor. We have seen the accelerators and the GM counter. Okay, so whatever knowledge we have got, where to apply that knowledge. So to see that particular point, of course, the last point in the unit is provided, that is nothing but the applications of nuclear energy. And as you people can see on the screen, the nuclear physics is having applications in energy sources, it is having applications in radiation treatment, it is having applications in homeland security. Then imaging and diagnostics is one area where the nuclear physics is used. Then nuclear forensics, then material science and art and archaeology. So these are the various fields where we can apply the knowledge of nuclear physics. So some of the applications we are going to talk about. So energy sources is one application, and as I have mentioned, or as we people have seen, the nuclear reactors. So nuclear reactors are the instruments with which you can generate the nuclear energy, and that nuclear energy may be converted into the electricity, and for that nuclear power plants are used. Okay, so on the screen you can see the map of India and the places where we are having the nuclear power plants right now, that is also mentioned, and the cities where we are going to have such kind of facilities, that is also mentioned. So Tarapur is the place which is related to our state, is having this particular facility, nuclear power plants, and where we can have the conversion of nuclear energy into electricity. Okay, so like this, Kakrapar, then Tarapur, Kaiga, then like this couple of Narora, or in Rajasthan, Rawat Bhata. These are some kinds of places where nuclear power plants are used for the generation of electricity. Okay, so this is one application, that is generating electricity, generating energy from the nuclear interactions. So this is one kind of applications of nuclear physics. Then radiation treatment, as I have already mentioned, in medical field there are some treatments in which radiations are used. So on the screen you can see two examples, like external beam therapy. So basically, if tumor is there inside the body, then radiotherapy that directs the radiations that can be used, and that may be a external kind of thing or internal kind of thing. Is the screen visible to all of you? I think screen is not visible to all of you. Okay. I think there is some network issue. Just a second. Okay, so is the screen? Okay. So I hope screen is visible and my voice is audible to all of you. Is the screen visible?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Okay. So as I was mentioning that radiation or radioactivity is used in medical field. There are two instances with which we can have the radiation treatment. One is the external beam therapy, or we can insert the radiations directly into the body. Okay, so here you can see one case, radiotherapy that directs the radiation at the tumor from the outside of the body. So one example is given related to that, or another thing is we can insert the radiations directly to the tumorous cells. Okay, so by inserting the radiations with the help of some facilities like catheter, so treatment may be done, or by exposing the radiations externally, the radiation treatment will be done in actual. Okay. Then various kinds of imaging and diagnostic tools, they use the knowledge of nuclear physics. So if some damage is there inside the brain, or if brain related study wants to do, then such kind of imaging can be done. So you might have seen such kind of images at any instances. Okay. Another treatment, as I said, in the research field, or this example I have already quoted, that if a transistor is made with the help of say some nanomaterials, and if you want to increase the electrical conductivity of the transistor that is designed and developed, so at that case you can use the irradiation or radiation procedure, with which, with the help of some accelerators, you may insert the charged particles into the formed transistor. Okay, so what kind of changes we can give, that is mentioned on the screen. These are research based examples. Basically here the FET characteristic, transistor characteristics are mentioned. So after having the irradiation, of course greater beneficial characteristics are observed. So in the material science field, one can go for such kind of study, which includes the applications of nuclear physics. Then whatever I have mentioned, in spite of that, there are huge amount of applications in various fields. So what are that applications that you can see on the screen? Of course, very deep discussion is not there with respect to these points, but of course you should know that where we can apply the knowledge of nuclear physics. So that's why I have kept this particular slide, so you can read and recall what are the fields where we can apply the knowledge of nuclear physics. Okay, so this is all about the chapter, and of course here it ends your unit number 4 section, first section. Okay, So nuclear physics gets completed with this particular point. If you are having any doubt, you may ask. And of course, in next lecture, I'm not going to conduct Viva directly, Farhan, and in order to prevent our time loss, I have created that quiz related to practicals. So whatever are the quiz marks, that I'm going to consider as a Viva marks. Okay. Yeah, Akib, I know about the submission. So after this lecture, I'll try to find out what is the problem related to that. If some problem is there, I'll put that thing in the EP discussion group, and if